Hello, every pony. I'm MasterCode, your ace analyst, and today we'll be taking a look at issues number 87 and 88, The Fast and the Furriest.
Oh yes, reminds me of the action car movie franchise.
Definitely. Speaking of which, did you see the new trailer for The Fastest and the Furious 666?
Oh yes, it looks really good.
I know, right? I mean, Roderick Toretto died 2 movies ago, and now he's being summoned back to existence for Death Race 3000 as a Terminator.
Faster and Furious 666 Judgment Day, coming soon to a theater near you.
Good times. Anyway, it's time for one of the biggest races in Equestria, the Daytona Breach, where only the most daring racers travel along the mountainous borders between Equestria and Yakistan, chariot style. And our favorite Rainbow Mane Pegasus is taking on the challenge. All the while, a dastardly villain duo is attempting to smuggle a precious dragon artifact they stole. All the while, 2 emissaries from the Dragonlands are searching for said artifact. All the while, dealing with a long-broken friendship between Big Mac and his full-hood friend Silver Streak. All the while... Oh, wait, that's all. So yeah, just from the synopsis alone, this 2-parter throws a lot at the reader, and I would say that's probably the biggest issue of the story. Does this make the story bad? Well, no, but the fact that there's so many elements to focus on, it makes the pacing and potential of the story a little muddled. But I'll bring this back around later once we've gone through the story actual. I do like how the lore reflects the origins of NASCAR, where instead of bootlegging alcohol and becoming a racing scene, it's about carrying barrels of cider to Yakistan. Something relatable and interesting for the audience to connect with. Though it does contradict the history with the Yak lands to what's been established in the series. And before you say the comics aren't canon line, just hear me out.
Equestria and Yakistan haven't opened their borders for hundreds of moons. In fact, Yakistan is so far north of the Crystal Mountains, no pony's even been there.
And the comic dash tells how this event got started.
It all started years ago, when the intrepid ponies would carry cartloads of cider to the thirsty X of Yakistan.
The exposition about the years, combined with the sepia tone of these panels, indicates that these ponies were delivering carts to Yakistan long before that Season 5 episode, yet that episode claims that no ponies have ever been to the Yak Empire before that point.
Great continuity!
And again, yes, I know what you're saying, I'll move on to the comic actual now. One of my favorite aspects is Big Mac, the stoic stallion who says much despite saying so little. I've always admired Big Mac for his focus to accomplish any task, from repairing a gazebo, fixing up the farm, or any problem he comes across. He's also a great teacher in certain situations, as he's able to coach Rainbow on the course and help her form preparing for the rough environment of the race. Though I like how Rainbow is able to put aside her ego, not just thinking about winning. She does care about Big Mac's plight and wants to help him however she can. The dynamic between Big Mac and Spike is also a lot of fun. Following dungeons and discords, while we haven't seen much of them, the 2 bros have been friends for so long, Spike is able to interpret the Red Stallion's actions to the point where the dragon can actually read his body language and get his friend's backstory from just these subtle stances. This is interesting firstly from a story standpoint, as this is a much more clever and unique way for the audience to learn about Big Mac's past rather than him or Silver just talking about it, as Mac isn't the most talkative type. It's also interesting because it shows growth in Spike's character to understand others. In many situations, most notably with Twilight, he's usually able to analyze ponies' behavior and tells them how they're wrong. Though in most situations, his friend's behavior is obvious, like when they're freaking out over something. Now he's come to the point where he can communicate some ponies' feelings without them saying a word, which is some decent development for him. So let's talk about this friendship problem between Big Mac and Silver Streak. So we find out that they were once good friends in their fullhood, both sharing their love of racing, but Big Mac became the better athlete. The 2 eventually joined in the Daytona. Mac beat him, and Silver walked off in a huff. In other words, Silver was acting like
Such a little bitch.
racing was the one thing he loved the most, and it got taken away from him, reacting angrily to the loss. Again, in other words,
Little bitch.
Yeah, not the most compelling or original of plot points, and as far as the rivalry between the 2, it's handled okay. Initially, he's mostly just a proud blowhard, still holding feelings of jealousy against the Red Stallion, but at least the conflict does evolve, as during the race, instead of just bragging or insulting him the whole time, Silver's thoughts return to reminiscing about the good times of their friendship, even admiring how far Big Mac has come, and the fact that they're having this talk during the race is not only funny, but is also a much more interesting dynamic than just having the 2 talk face to face. Now let's talk about the smuggling aspect in our villain, Dr. Sax Romer, who looks like Doctor Strange's evil cousin.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
Not really much to say on him other than he's just your typical one-dimensional, evil, conniving villain. I'm all for a smuggling storyline, but it feels very tacked on here. Our leads don't interact with him until the end, and even then, the villain is caught, isn't referenced again, and doesn't learn anything, nor do our leads learn anything from him. I guess they wanted a little more tension put into this whole event, but honestly, if you strip this whole plot element with the smuggling and the dragon emissary searching for the item, the overall story wouldn't be affected at all, and really could have been its own comic because it keeps shifting the focus away from the race and kind of kills the pacing. But I digress. Something else that the comic never really takes full advantage of is the climate. Throughout the comic, it's said how dangerous the mountain roads are and the fact that it's really cold, especially for dragons, which is why Sax wants this thing over the border, where the dragons can't get it. We see that the dragons are freezing, yet the ponies wear no cold gear at all. If you wanted more tension in the story, forget the villain and the smuggling plot and make the weather and the environment the villain. Making it really windy, rainy, or snowy puts more pressure on the racers and makes the experience much more dramatic, watching them struggle to make it through the elements. That's a much better story that keeps focus on the race and the struggling friendship between our leads. As for Yona, while she does contribute to catching the villain, she really doesn't have much impact on the story, and it's mostly just here because the race travels through Yakistan. And though the dragon emissaries weren't in it much, I do appreciate that they were not written as brutish or mean-spirited as we normally see them in the show, and came off as well-spoken and collected individuals. Lastly, we have the artwork done by Fleeks and Breckle. Even though I said the weather could have made more impact, the environments and landscapes still do a good job of conveying the intensity in treacherous roads, with the numerous mountain peaks, rickety bridges, and uses of clouds to show how high they are. And being that this is a race-centric story, the art does a good job of showing movement and speed lines during close-up shots. The blue hues also help to emphasize the cooler weather, and the backgrounds themselves have a lot of detail, just adding more depth to the landscapes. So in the end, the comic has a kind of mixed presentation. Like I said, the smuggling portion feels tacked on and distracting from the main part of the story. Without the B plot, we could have maybe expanded on Mac helping Rainbow with her training, and like Spike, learn the guy's body language so that she and him could form a greater bond. The weather and frigid temperatures could have also been emphasized better, making the race much more dramatic. Also, a little better motivation for Silver ending the friendship would have made him seem much less petty. Like, maybe if Mac during the other Daytona race accidentally bumped into Silver, giving him the victory. Just something that doesn't make Big Mac's win clean as a sheet, and makes him feel more guilty and not wanting to race again. But as the comic is, it's still decent. The interactions between our leads are good, the artwork is great, the lore, despite clashing with the canon, is still interesting, and the race as is was still fun. And with that, this marks the end of the regular run of the main Friendship is Magic series. Starting with issue number 89, Season 10 begins. And I'm definitely looking forward to that. Well, that's it for today, guys. Until next time, MC.